What if I told you that the life you think you're controlling isn't entirely yours to direct? What if your actions, reactions, and even your sense of who you are influenced by something deep within you, something you're not even aware of? According to the groundbreaking philosopher and psychologist Carl Jung, there's a hidden part of your mind, the unconscious, that's shaping your life in ways you don't fully understand. Jung called this force the shadow. It's the unseen side of you, filled with suppressed feelings, desires, and traits that you've pushed aside throughout your life. But here's the kicker. Even though you think you've forgotten about it, it hasn't forgotten about you. In fact, it's been quietly pulling the strings behind the scenes, influencing your thoughts, your relationships, and even your destiny. The moment you wake up to this reality, something changes. The first question you need to ask yourself is, how much of my life am I really in control of? You've probably had moments where you reacted impulsively. Maybe you got unreasonably angry, felt an urge to act out of jealousy, or even sabotaged something great in your life. Have you ever wondered, why did I do that? Carl Jung argued that those moments, the ones you can't explain, come from the shadow self, a part of you that's buried in the unconscious, but still very much alive. Jung famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Let that sink in for a second. What if what you think is fate is actually just your unconscious mind working its magic without your permission? The shadow self is made up of everything that society, your family, or even you have deemed unacceptable about yourself. Think back to childhood. How many times were you told, don't be too angry, don't be too selfish, or don't ask for too much? So you did what any child would do. You buried those emotions, ignored those desires, and learned to hide the parts of yourself that didn't fit the mold of what you were supposed to be. But here's the thing. You can't just repress them forever. These emotions don't disappear. They slink into the unconscious mind, growing in strength, until one day they resurface in ways you can't control. For one, it starts making decisions for you. You've probably felt the push and pull of this force in your own life. Have you ever felt inexplicably drawn to people who push your buttons, or felt extreme emotions when faced with something seemingly minor? That's the shadow working its magic, influencing your thoughts and actions from the dark corners of your mind. The deeper you suppress these aspects of yourself, the more power they have over you. But here's the good news. Your shadow doesn't have to be your enemy. It's simply a neglected part of you, waiting to be acknowledged and understood. And once you bring it into the light, you can regain control over your life. Let's break down how this works. Think of your mind like an iceberg, the small part that sticks above the water. That's your conscious mind. But the larger, submerged part beneath the surface, that's your unconscious, your shadow. And as powerful as the conscious mind may seem, it's only the tip of the iceberg. The majority of your thoughts, reactions, and decisions come from the unconscious. But why does this shadow exist in the first place? From the moment you were born, you were shaped by the world around you, by your family, your culture, and society. As you grew, you started to understand what was acceptable and unacceptable. If you showed anger, you were taught it was wrong. If you were too loud, you were told to be quiet. If you wanted something too badly, you were told you were selfish. So, over time, you learned to push these parts of yourself down. You might have thought you were just being a good person by ignoring those flaws. But in reality, you were just letting them grow in the shadows, waiting for a chance to emerge. But here's the catch. What you suppress doesn't disappear. It festers, it lingers, and it finds ways to sneak back into your life, usually when you least expect it. And when it doesn't just show up in little ways. It can lead to profound self-sabotage, emotional outbursts, and unhealthy patterns that you can't explain. The shadow has its fingerprints all over your life in ways you might not even realize. Here's how. This is when you see your own hidden flaws in others. Have you ever felt an intense dislike for someone who seems to display a trait you secretly have but refuse to acknowledge? For example, if you suppress your own anger, you might find yourself annoyed by people who express their frustrations openly. Or if you're jealous of someone's success but don't want to admit it, you might start resenting them for no obvious reason. The things you judge most harshly in others are often the very things you refuse to see in yourself. Have you ever had something good in your life, an opportunity, a relationship, or even success, and then somehow found a way to ruin it? You might have felt like you didn't deserve it, or your subconscious was trying to protect you from failure, or even success. This is your shadow at work, pulling you away from things that make you uncomfortable, even if they're good for you. You've probably experienced this at some point, an emotional reaction that feels way too intense for the situation at hand. Maybe you snapped at a friend over something trivial, or you felt overwhelming anxiety over something that didn't warrant it. These intense feelings don't always come from the present moment. They're often rooted in past experiences or emotions that you've buried deep inside. Ever felt a fear you couldn't explain? Or experienced deep insecurity even though things were going well? Those feelings aren't random. They're often the result of the unconscious parts of yourself that you haven't come to terms with yet. The shadow feeds on fear and insecurity, and it uses them to control your life. But the thing about the shadow is that it doesn't have to control you. It's not a monster lurking in the dark. It's simply a part of you that's been misunderstood, ignored, or repressed. And once you start acknowledging it, you can begin to take back control. Let's look at an example. Sarah had always prided herself on being a people pleaser. She was the kind of person who would go out of her way to make others happy, even if it meant sacrificing her own needs. People admired her for her kindness, but deep down, Sarah felt frustrated. She wanted to stand up for herself, but every time she tried, she felt guilty. Her entire life, she had been taught that putting others first was virtuous, and standing up for herself was selfish. So, she buried her anger, her desires, and her sense of self-worth deep inside. One day at work, Sarah was passed over for a promotion she had worked hard for. She smiled, congratulated her colleague, and said all the right things. But inside, she was seething. Later that night, she found herself crying uncontrollably. The frustration, the anger, and the feelings of betrayal came flooding out, and she couldn't stop it. That night, Sarah realized something. All the anger she had been suppressing for years, all the resentment, had finally found a way to break free. She had ignored her shadow for so long that it had grown into something too powerful to contain. But in that moment of emotional release, Sarah also began to understand something profound. The only way to take control was to accept the parts of herself she had been running from. Sarah's story is a powerful reminder that ignoring your shadow doesn't make it go away. In fact, the more you try to repress it, the more power it has over you. The key to breaking free lies in acknowledging it and integrating it into your life. So, how do you start integrating your shadow? This process is known as shadow work. It's not about erasing these hidden parts of yourself. It's about accepting them and learning to use them constructively. Pay attention to the moments that stir up intense emotions or irrational reactions. What do these moments reveal about your shadow? What parts of yourself are you rejecting or hiding? Question your judgments. When you feel yourself judging others harshly, ask yourself why. What are you seeing in them that you've ignored in yourself? Embrace the uncomfortable feelings. Rather than pushing away the uncomfortable feelings, lean into them. Recognize that they are part of your inner world, and instead of letting them control you, begin to understand them. Reframe your mindset. Shadow work involves transforming negative traits into positive ones. Anger can fuel motivation. Fear can lead to wisdom, and jealousy can help.